Most people buy pots for their patio and fill them with the same annuals every single summer. Petunias in May, dead by September, and then you do it all over again next year. What nobody tells you is that some of the hardest working perennials in the garden are also the most spectacular plants you can grow in a container. And several of them are silently running pest control on everything around them while they sit there looking beautiful. You do not need a spray program. You do not need to be out there with a bottle of something every weekend. You need the right plants in the right pots, and the garden starts doing that work for you. Now, number 6 on this list stopped me cold the first time I saw what it was doing in my own garden. I had it sitting in a pot near the vegetable beds, and I noticed something. The tomatoes right next to it had almost none of the aphid damage that was hitting the plants on the other side of the garden. Not a little less, almost none. I have been gardening for 30 years, and I want to tell you about that plant before this video is over, because most gardeners walk right past it at the nursery without a second look. Stay with me. Every plant on this list does 3 things. It comes back year after year without you replanting it. It genuinely thrives in a container, not just survives, not just limps along, but thrives. And it earns its place by reducing your pest pressure through scent, chemistry, or by pulling in the insects that eat the ones you do not want. These are plants that are working even when you're not watching. Number 1 is lavender. And before you say you have tried it and it did not work, stay with me for just a moment, because almost everyone who has killed lavender made the same 2 mistakes. And once you know what they are, lavender becomes one of the easiest plants you will ever grow. The mistake is overwatering in a pot without enough drainage. Lavender wants to dry out between drinks. It wants lean, gritty soil, not rich, fluffy mix. And it wants a container with a hole big enough that water genuinely leaves instead of sitting in the bottom. Put it in a terracotta pot with a fast-draining mix. I cut my regular potting soil with about 1/3 perlite, and then leave it alone between waterings. That's the whole secret. Here's what lavender is doing for the rest of your garden while it blooms. The oils in the leaves and flowers are deeply offensive to aphids, whiteflies, moths, and fleas. Not mildly unpleasant, offensive. They avoid the area around it. Position a pot of lavender near the entrance to your vegetable garden or close to your roses, and you're creating a scent barrier those pests will root around. I have seen this in my own beds for more than 20 years, and the research finally caught up. The linalool and linaloyl acetate in lavender are documented repellents for a remarkable range of common garden pests. And meanwhile, it is blooming from late spring through midsummer. It is absolutely covered in pollinators, and it smells like something you would pay $15 for at a shop. Plant it once and let it do the work for you. Number 2 is catmint, and this is the one I recommend first to anyone who tells me they want low maintenance and long bloom time, and they want it in a pot on a sunny porch or patio. Catmint blooms from late May all the way into October if you know the one thing to do with it. After that first big flush of purple in late spring, and it is a spectacular flush, this plant covers itself in flowers. Cut it back by about 1/3, not all the way down, 1/3. It comes back within a few weeks fuller than before, and blooms again, and sometimes again after that. I learned this the hard way. My first 3 seasons with catmint, I let it go, watched it flop and get ratty in July, and I thought the plant was done. It was not done. I just had not given it the haircut it was asking for. For pests, catmint is particularly effective against aphids, Japanese beetles, and squash bugs. If you grow squash or cucumbers anywhere near your patio, a pot of catmint nearby is doing real work. The nepetalactone in catmint, that is the same compound that affects cats, yes, but in a different concentration than catnip, is a proven repellent for a number of the insects that give vegetable gardeners the most trouble. And catmint in a pot is beautiful. Soft silver green foliage, clouds of lavender blue flowers, clean and tidy in a way that earns its place in any arrangement. Number 3 is chives, and I know what you're thinking. That's a kitchen herb. Yes, it is. It's also a perennial that comes back every spring before almost anything else in the garden, covers itself in purple pom-pom flowers in May and June, and is one of the most effective aphid deterrents you can grow in a container. The sulfur compounds that give chives their smell are the same ones that make them so effective at repelling aphids, Japanese beetles, and carrot flies. Grow a pot of chives near your roses, and the aphid pressure genuinely drops. I have watched this play out so many seasons I stopped questioning it. The other thing chives do in a pot is they divide themselves. Every 2 or 3 years you lift the clump, pull it apart, and you have 3 or 4 new plants. 1 pot becomes 4. That is a garden center's worth of pest protection for the price of 1 small plant. And all you did was ignore it for a couple of years. Trust me on this one. This is actually right in line with what I was thinking about when I put together the Lazy Garden Blueprint. I kept watching gardeners buy the right plants and then arrange them in ways that left the whole garden working against itself. Pest problems in one spot, empty gaps in another, and the gardener in the middle trying to manage it all manually. So I built a 30-day system around layers, which plants go together, which ones support each other, and how to arrange them so the garden is doing work you would otherwise be doing yourself. It's on screen if you want it. But there are 4 more plants on this list, and number 6 is the one I have been promising you. So let us keep going. Number 4 is yarrow, and this one earns its place through a different mechanism than the ones we have talked about so far. Yarrow does not repel pests directly through scent the way lavender and catmint do. What yarrow does is attract the predators, the insects that eat your pests, lacewings, parasitic wasps, hoverflies, ladybugs. These are the garden's pest control crew, and yarrow is one of the plants they are most reliably drawn to. Flat-topped flower clusters in white, yellow, pink, or red, blooming from early summer through fall. The flowers are landing pads for beneficial insects, and once those insects are established in your garden, they go to work on the aphids and thrips and caterpillars that are causing damage. In a pot, yarrow wants good drainage and full sun, and otherwise asks almost nothing. It tolerates drought better than most perennials. It does not need rich soil. In fact, too much fertilizer makes it flop. I've grown it in fairly poor mix with a handful of slow-release fertilizer and had it perform beautifully for years. Deadhead the spent flowers, and it keeps going. Leave the seed heads, and you feed the birds in late fall. This is the kind of plant your grandmother knew and nobody teaches anymore. Number 5 is lemon balm, and this one has a reputation it does not entirely deserve. People hear mint family, and they immediately worry about it taking over the garden, and that concern is completely fair for ground-planted mint in a pot. That spreading habit is contained, and what you get instead is a reliable, fragrant, pest-repelling perennial that comes back every year and earns real estate on any patio or porch. The citrus scent, and it is a genuine lemon scent, not a chemical approximation, is produced by the same compounds that make it effective against mosquitoes, gnats, and whiteflies. A pot of lemon balm near your outdoor seating is doing something your citronella candle claims to do and mostly does not. I wasted 3 summers figuring out that lemon balm wants regular cutting back. Let it flower and go to seed, and it gets leggy and less fragrant. Cut it back hard 2 or 3 times across the season, and it stays full. The leaves stay tender, and the scent stays strong. That scent is everything. It is what the pests are responding to, and a full, healthy plant puts out more of it. Cut it back. Let it come back. Cut it again. It does not mind. It actually seems to appreciate it. Now, number 6. And I meant what I said about this one at the beginning. The plant is agastache, and most people have walked past it in the nursery without a second glance because the name sounds unfamiliar and the pictures on the tag do not do it justice. Common names include hyssop or hummingbird mint, and that second name starts to tell you what this plant actually does. Agastache produces tall spikes of flowers, orange, purple, pink, blue, depending on the variety. From midsummer through hard frost, late summer, the part of the season when almost nothing else is blooming and the garden starts to look like it is given up. That is when agastache takes over. Here's what I noticed that first time. The tomatoes next to my agastache pot had almost no aphid damage. What I eventually understood is that agastache was doing 2 things at once. Its strong anise mint scent was discouraging the aphids directly, and its flowers were loaded with parasitic wasps and predatory hoverflies, the very insects that parasitize and eat aphids. It was repelling from one direction and introducing natural predators from another direction simultaneously. I have never seen any other single plant do both those things at the same time. In a pot, agastache wants excellent drainage and full sun, and it does not want to sit wet over winter. In colder zones, anything below zone 5, you can bring the pot into a cool garage over winter, or treat it as a tender perennial and take cuttings in fall. In zone 6 and warmer, it winters over in a pot without drama. The hummingbirds find it like it is the only thing in the garden. Some mornings in August I have counted 4 or 5 at once working a single pot. If you grow one thing from this list that you have never grown before, let it be agastache. Garden centers won't always tell you this, but I will. Buy it in a 4-inch pot in spring, and by August it will be 3 feet tall and covered in color when everything else is winding down. Out of everything on this list so far, which one are you growing for the very first time this season? Drop it in the comments. Gardeners in different climates and different zones are reading those answers, and your real-world experience with a plant in your region helps someone else figure out what will actually work for them. Number 7 is Russian sage, and this is the one I recommend for anyone who has a hot, dry spot and thinks nothing beautiful will grow there. Russian sage is silver blue and airy and gorgeous from June through September. It handles heat and drought in a way that would kill most perennials. And in a container, it asks for almost nothing beyond sun and drainage. The stems are silver white even before it blooms, and once it does bloom, those soft violet blue flower spikes, the plant looks expensive and effortless at the same time. If a plant needs too much fussing, it is not invited back into my garden, and Russian sage has been invited back every single year for more than a decade. The pest story with Russian sage is straightforward. Deer avoid it, rabbits avoid it. The very strong, slightly medicinal fragrance of the foliage makes it unappealing to most mammals that browse in gardens. If you have deer pressure near your patio, a container of Russian sage near your more vulnerable plants creates a scent barrier that helps redirect them. And like agastache, it blooms when the season is getting tired, carrying color and activity into September and October, while shorter season plants have already quit. Cut it back to about 6 inches from the base in early spring before the new growth starts pushing. That is the one thing it needs from you annually, one cut. The rest of the year, it takes care of itself. Now you know what makes a perennial worth its spot in a pot. It comes back without you replanting it. It looks genuinely beautiful, not just adequate, but beautiful. And it is earning its space by reducing the pest pressure on everything around it, either through scent, through beneficial insect attraction, or through both at once. 7 plants, all of them proven, all of them pot-worthy, all of them doing 2 jobs instead of 1. Knowing the plants is the first part. Building the garden so they actually work together, so the containers are placed where they support each other, the layers fills in, the beneficial insects stay in the garden instead of visiting once and leaving, and the whole system is doing work you would otherwise be doing yourself. That is the conversation I put together in the Lazy Garden Blueprint. I built it because I kept watching good gardeners make the same setup mistakes I made in my first 10 years. It is a 30-day system built around the lazy layer method. Plant combinations that come back, spread naturally, fill empty spaces, help crowd out weeds, pull in pest predators, and keep blooming with less work every season. It is not about planting more. It is about planting in the right layers so every part of your garden has a job. It cost something because putting it together took real time. The link is on screen. If you want the garden without the fussing, that is where it is. 7 perennials, 1 pot each. All summer, all fall, almost no effort, and your pest problem starts solving itself before you even notice it happening. Now, sweetheart, go get that lavender into some gritty soil and stop overwatering it. See you in the next one.